Good evening, ladies. Good evening. Tonight's call will be a teaching call. Tonight's call will be a teaching call. We will have time to ask and answer questions to make sure that, you fully grasp what is being shared here today. However, after this week in the group, and seeing some of the things that were posted, I definitely wanted to be sure to cover some of the basics around femininity, masculinity, how to use it, when to use it, how to even understand when you are operating from your masculine or operating from your feminine. You make sure that everyone is muted. Operating from your masculine or your feminine. And so I saw that question come up this week in the group, and I just wanted to bring it back to the basics for you. I know we have a lot of new women, and so this will be supportive and helpful for those of you who've been with me a while. It'll be helpful for those of you who are just beginning your journey in feminine success. So today we're going to talk about how to discern the difference between being in your masculine and being in your feminine. And we're going to talk about some traits of both so that when you notice these things in yourself, you can quickly say, okay, here's where I am and here's where I want to be. Okay, so we're going to start by going into the masculine side of things because that's what most of us are most familiar with. How to, even if we don't realize that we are operating in our masculine, we are familiar with the actions that go along with it and the responses or reactions that we have. Sometimes operating in your masculine is actually your default. For many women, it is your default. It is what you go back to when things begin to feel uncomfortable. And the feminine has a way of feeling uncomfortable because we've been raised up or conditioned in this world where the masculine is more prominent, more overt, considered more powerful, and all of these things. So when we get to the place of discomfort, we go back to the things that are seemingly stable, hard, tough, and that we've grown accustomed to. So we're going to talk about first the masculine side of things, and of course have your notebook out so that you're able to take notes, but you will have access to the replay of this call. So being present is really important. The first thing that stands out or that you may notice in the masculine aspect of yourself is the desire to quote unquote make it happen. Make it happen, make it happen. And the feeling that if I don't make it happen, how will it happen? Most women who operate wholly in their masculine tend to have a make it happen kind of mindset. Give me 1 second. Tend to have that make it happen mindset, where they literally often have a hard time allowing anyone else to have input because the mindset is, I can do it. I know how to do it. I want it done this way. This is what I want. This is how I want it. Another aspect of the masculine is that you default to your goals. So say life is becoming challenging or difficult, or trying to be in the flow is a quote unquote not working, because being in the flow is not something that works or doesn't work. It is. It's not working. So what do? You default to your goals, defaulting to a go get it, hustle grind mentality. The masculine aspect also needs to force. So the make it happen mindset, what's behind that? Force. Feeling the need to force your will upon things, upon people, forcing it to go your way, forcing people to think how you want them to think. When you find yourself in that space where you cannot hold space for differences or things outside of what you want or how you think it should be, you're in your masculine. Now, as I'm discussing this, I don't want you to think that, oh my God, if I'm ever in my masculine, this is a problem. Because balance is important. Balance is vital. Does that mean that you have to be 50% feminine and 50% masculine? No, it does not. When we talk about balance in this community, we're speaking about harmony and being in harmony and understanding what to use and when, how to show up and when, so that you can get the best results for your life ongoing. Another aspect of the masculine side or the masculine energy is the need to be independent. The need to be independent. Most of the women that I have coached or worked with or even just spoken to, a lot of what we learn about independence came from men. The idea of you need to have your own, do it on your own, be able to do it on your own is a masculine mindset. Those of us who learned it from our mothers often learned it from women who were shielding themselves from men. And so while being able to take care of yourself, stand up for yourself, show up for yourself is very important, having a need to be solely independent, having a need to be detached from anything and anyone and completely on your own, that is a masculine mindset, and it often works against us as women. We burn out a lot quicker because we are designed different. It's not about being unequal, it's the difference in design. And so independence often works against us. And if you are finding yourself often in that space, then now is a great time to start tapping into support systems and building a network around yourself. Another aspect is, and this is something that I for sure struggle with, and that is seeing things as black and white. That's a masculine mindset. There's no middle ground. It's this or it's that. There is no space, wiggle room, room to grow, none of it. And the black and white thing is, like I said, that's something that I experience and work through often. I often stop myself and say, well, where is the gray area here? And ease myself into, non-judgmentally, into seeing the space between. Okay. Another masculine trait, which is something that we actually all need, and that is decisiveness. Decisiveness. Men are masculinity, because not all men are decisive, but masculinity supports decisiveness. That it's either this or it's that is a foundational piece of being able to make a decision. So as you can see, these things are not negative within themselves, but too much of anything is harmful. Okay. Now we can talk about some of the ways that femininity shows up as opposed to the traits that we just spoke about dealing with masculinity. The first is being accommodating. So you have the make it happen side of things. I have to make it happen. I have to make it happen. The accommodating side of things holds space for what is happening and allows what you need to actually happen. This is where you find manifestation. This is where you find receptivity, being able to accommodate what is happening in your life. And so that could be people, that could be circumstances, that could be learning experiences, that could be abundance, could be love. Being able to hold space for what is currently. And if you think about, if you have read the Feminine Success book, I share, and I've shared in previous trainings in Feminine Success School, the feminine creative process. And when we think about being accommodating, when we as women create, we go through a process. We go through the process of fertilization. So the idea is planted, whatever it is, it could be a baby or whatever. Then we go through germination. Then we go through actually nurturing, incubation, and then we give birth. There is nothing that we can do as women to speed up the process, to make the baby happen. There's nothing we can do. And so that masculine make it happen does not fit in the feminine accommodating. What you can do is hold space for the process that's happening within you, or the process that's happening within someone else. I know I have a lot of moms here. The process that's happening within your children. Often, especially for those of us who are homeschooling, there's this, you need to learn it. I need to make it happen. I need to make you see. I need to make you understand. And accommodating the process actually helps the process flourish. What you'll notice, even for those of you I know a few of you have started a garden now that we're all home. There's a process called forced ripening that happens in commercial farming, industrial farming, where a plant or a fruit is not ready and it is forced to be ready. That plant doesn't have the nutrients that it needs, that it would have if it were allowed to grow, if it were accommodated, its growth process were accommodated. The vital minerals, the enzymes that would have been there, it's not as nutritionally dense as it would be. And it's a reason why we now have to supplement. No matter how healthy your diet is, we have to supplement because the food is not being allowed to grow. So that accommodating nature is feminine. The intuitive nature, which I call knowing. Men have to force things where men know. Women know. We have an intuition that allows you to know certain things, but where the difficulty comes in is that many of us cannot explain what we know or how we know what we know. And so we feel like it's irrational, it doesn't make sense. I can't know this. I can't possibly know this. Let me find something logical to attach myself to. So that knowing, that intuitive knowing is feminine. And like I said in the beginning, a lot of what we don't understand about ourselves as women, we hide or we ignore and default to the masculine because the masculine is logical, the masculine is tangible, and it's easy to attach to. Okay? So whereas the masculine is very independent, the feminine is very communal. Very communal. This is why you see even those of us who are very independent, we invest in our communities. We are, even if we're independent, we like hanging out with our friends. We have communities around us. We are tribal. We have tribes of women around us who are supporting and uplifting us in different ways. So the feminine is very communal in nature and community focused in nature. Also, very respectful of weakness. Because of our nurturing nature, we tend to be more respectful of weakness in others when we are in our feminine. So if you find yourself on the other side of that, where, you find yourself, people are moving too slow, people aren't getting it fast enough, and it's frustrating you and it's driving you up a wall, allow yourself to breathe and stop in that moment, to be respectful of the difference there, respectful of an area of weakness so that you can nurture it. And nurture, sometimes we're taught that nurture will weaken people. Overgiving will weaken people. Nurture actually strengthens. And it's important that you're aware of that difference. Overgiving has no boundaries. Nurture does. If you think about, again, the feminine creative process, when our children are babies, we nurse them. You don't nurse a 10-year-old. Boundaries. There are people, there are women who, and many of you have experienced this, you meet a guy who is 30 years old, 35 years old, 40 years old, and is still looking for a woman to be his mother. Usually in that situation, he was raised by a woman who was an overgiver and did not have boundaries around her nurturing. And so when he could have grown, he experienced failure to thrive because he didn't have to thrive, because he was still being nurtured in a way as if he were a child when he was in his growth process. So that's really important to understand. While the feminine is nurturing and respectful of weaknesses, we are respectful of weaknesses to the degree that we can nurture those weaknesses into a strength, not to the degree that we accommodate the weakness so much that the person never has to grow, or the situation never has to grow, or the business never has to grow. Okay. And so I want to, while we are ahead, open up the floor to hear your thoughts or questions that you may have right now. Are these things that you're seeing come up for yourself, things that you maybe have experienced in other women? How is this resonating for you right now?
This is Christy. I just want to say, as you were speaking, it definitely hit home for me. I don't know if anyone saw my post in response to someone in our group who was talking about their son. And I communicated with the person that I was feeling the same way in our household with our 3-year-old son. And what happens is normally when he gets into a temper tantrum, and when he gets to that point, I immediately go into this, I guess it would be considered a masculine side, where I'm like, sit down, don't do it. And it's almost like there's rage inside of me.
Mm-hmm.
And today I caught myself, based on the share that the young lady in our group had shared. I caught myself, I just lowered my voice, and my son just stared at me like, okay, what's happening here?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm catching myself when I go into that form of, I guess, of a totalitarian way of speaking to him. And I have a question about when you said to hold the space. Let me see. You said hold space for the process that is happening within you.
Mm-hmm.
What, I don't know if this may sound like a silly question, but what exactly does that look like when you say hold space for the process that is happening within you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, first it starts with an inquiring. So asking yourself, what is this that I'm feeling?
Okay.
Where does this come from?
Okay.
And then what do I want it to be instead?
Okay.
Now, what not holding space there looks like is, now you know what you're feeling, you know what the issue is, and you know what you want it to be instead. But the next time the issue comes up, you are frustrated with yourself for not being where you want to be yet.
Okay.
Holding space is the area of patience and allowing yourself the grace to grow from where you are to where you want to be.
Okay. Okay.
And what I have experienced for myself and other women is that the more grace we're able to give ourselves, the easier growth is, first of all. So it makes growth an effortless process, but also the easier it is for us to be graceful with the people around us.
Okay.
Now, this is not a parenting class, but I'm gonna, because you brought up your son and the experience that you're having with your son, I'll share what I would do and what I have done in those situations. Because my oldest, he's now 10, when he was a baby, I had people around me who were, they had their own ways of raising children. And anytime my child would cry or fuss, it's like, what are you doing? Why is he crying? What are you doing to him? There were the people who were saying, what are you doing to him? And then there were the people who were saying, he needs to be corrected. You need to stop him from crying. You shouldn't let him do that. You shouldn't let him cry. However, so I responded to those things in a way. I was very young. I was 20 or 21 at the time, 21. And I thought they knew more than me. In my heart, I had the feeling of what I should do to respond to the situation, but I was young and felt like, well, they know more than me. They've had children. They know what to do. But as I've grown, what I understand now when children are having a temper tantrum is that they are experiencing emotions that they don't know how to sift through. They don't know how to manage. They don't know how to process them. So now I have a second chance to experience it. My 5-year old has a temper, like a temper. It's not that he just blasts out of nowhere, but when he gets angry, he gets angry. And so now, because I've grown through having a child who was highly emotional and still is, my 10-year-old will cry if the wind blows too hard. And he's a boy. So there are the constructs around, you need to make him tough and all of these other things. But as I've watched him grow, he's just a very compassionate and feeling kind of person. He's also very tough. He's also very brave, but he feels things deeply. And so, what I do now with my 5-year old, we do breathing exercises. When he is angry, and he just turned 5 like last month or the beginning of this month, when he's really angry, I stop him and allow him to feel it. We stand there for a minute. He's like shaking and in a rage, and his face is turning red. And I let him get it out. And then we breathe in deep and we breathe out. Now, that is for me and him. It's for me because what I want to do is say, you, why are you going off right now? Nobody did you anything. Chill out. Go sit down. However, in order to help him process his emotions, I have to acknowledge his emotions. I have to acknowledge that he is feeling something right now. I might not understand it. He might not understand it, but he's feeling it.
And that's where you're holding space.
Yes.
That's okay. Okay.
for what he is feeling, whether you understand it or he understands it or not. Now, this does not mean you just allow a child to do all the things. He's flipping, flopping all over the floor. However, what I do, this is an ongoing thing that we've had to manage. They're growing, is get down to his level, hold him, and say, we're not going to do that. That's not how we handle our emotions. And often when a child is in that moment and you are standing up over them and speaking down to them, we also have a kindergarten teacher on the phone, so she can help you out too, Symphony. um, but when you're standing up over them and you're commanding down at them, it makes the situation even worse, because now they're afraid too, on top of being emotional. So getting down to his level and connecting with your child. This has worked so effectively. Now I have my daughter who is 1. She is the child who will just spaz out for no reason. She's not getting attention, she's gonna fuss. One day she was fussing, and I am a parent who has a process of discipline. So there are steps in the disciplinary process in our household, and a spanking, it is the end of the process, but it's a part of the process. She's going through it. She doesn't want to chill. She's not, all of these things. And so I said, do you need a pop pop? And she looked at me. I got down on her level and was looking at her eye to eye. Do you need a pop? And she said, hug. And she needed a hug.
Oh, wow.
If I was in my feelings because she was in her feelings, then I would have missed that moment.
Okay, I
Connect
see.
with her and understand her feelings don't have anything to do with me. A lot of times when we are feeling that, what we are really feeling is inadequacy. We're feeling like, I should know what to do right now. I should know how to quiet him down. I should know how to calm him down. That's a whole other human being with emotions of their own. What you can do is connect with them in that moment and help them feel seen and understood. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, definitely. I that really has helped me. And like I said, I noticed immediately I was going into my masculine side in that particular area of my life. But when you mentioned holding space, that just caught my attention because I really didn't understand what that meant. But now I see that can be applied to so many different areas.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'm glad that that was helpful for you.
Definitely.
Okay. Symphony says, yes, eye contact. That's one of the first pieces of advice that a very experienced teacher gave me. It literally diffuses so much in my household to just get down at their level and look them in their eye. Even when you're being very firm, getting down at their level and looking them in their eye and telling them, this is what we're going to do and this is what we are not going to do. Bedtime, it's time to go to bed. And no, you're not going to get up and have 17 drinks of water. You already gave me a hug. It's time to lay down now. And we are very open with our children because we spend so much time with them, but we're also very clear with them and we have very clear boundaries. So you can be both. It's not, either I'm the parent that lets them do whatever they want to do, or I'm the parent who's super strict and stern and they never get to do anything. You can be both. And it's really about connecting with them on their level. Again, that's that feminine ability to be communal and the ability to be respectful of their weaknesses. A child not knowing how to process their emotions is a weakness, and they'll grow through it. But what often happens is they never grow through it, and we get adults who also don't know how to process their emotions because their parent did not walk them through that process as a child. They told them, sit down, be quiet, you don't need to be crying, all the things that many of us heard growing up. My mom used to tell me, put your feelings in your pocket. Like that was her, that's still her thing. She'll still tell me that. Put your feelings in your pocket. And so many of us have heard these things that moved us away from a very powerful force within ourselves, which is emotion. And so now our emotions often manage us instead of us managing them. I see you have your hand up, Ego. You can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, yeah.
Good evening.
Good evening. My question was, so I wanted to get a little bit more, I missed the part about defaulting to your goals in terms of the masculine side.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that, like, I love that everything with the masculine and the feminine kind of complement each other. So if you're feeling like you're leaning towards the masculine more, there's like the complementary side where you can, like, okay, this is how I can operate more on my feminine. But for defaults to your goals and the need to force things, I guess flow would be the feminine
Mm-hmm.
to that. I'm
A
just gonna, I wanted to get a little bit more details about default to your goals and what would be the, like, if you notice you're in that, how do you kind of balance it out with your like what's the feminine complements to that?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So the opposite to forcing is allowing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then defaulting to your goals. So this is using your goals as a filter for things that you do not want to experience.
Okay.
The other side of that, we just talked about holding space. So many times our goals just take up, we just fill the space with goals. We fill the space with things to do. Defaulting to thought is the opposite. So, how can I conceptualize this situation? How can I spend some time observing this situation? It doesn't mean you have to think it all the way through to a solution. But how can I observe in this moment? Is there something that I should be doing, which is that goal oriented mindset? Or is there instead a way for me to be right now? What would I rather be right now? So many times we've talked about, a lot of times, how we go through a difficult relationship, and we'll just use relationships here. We'll just use relationships here as an example. Go through a difficult relationship, deal with a breakup, whatever have you. And we say, you know what? I'm gonna focus on my business. My business is my man. My career is my that's my baby. That's what I'm going to focus on. Instead of taking that time to introspect and observe. When I started to do that, my relationships changed significantly, because then I was able to stop the patterns that were stopping me from having what I really wanted to have. Those patterns, defaulting to your goal, is a pattern. I don't like what's happening over here, so I'm just going to go and focus on this. This isn't say not to accomplish your goals, but using your goals as a scapegoat will have you going and never stop. You'll burn out. Instead, observe. What is it that I'm running from in this moment? How have I contributed to this moment? What about this did I like? Did I not like? And so defaulting to introspection and observation and that space of, let me just think this out. Let me just think this through. That will help you see the patterns that are keeping you in the recurring cycles, so that you can, quote unquote, break the chains. Does that make sense, Ego?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I've been in that cycle of defaulting to my goals. And
Mm,
like if something doesn't really work out in the ways that I think it should, then I go to the next goal and try to like hone in on that. And don't really give myself time to really think through the process.
mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. So yeah, that was definitely very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Often when we are defaulting to goals, there's a sense of a lack of control. So
Mhm.
there's something that is not going the way that you want it to go, and you don't know why, but you know that there is something that I can control. It's a need. A lot of women who deal with the need to be in control also deal with defaulting to their goals, because you can control that. You
Mhm.
can control how well you do in your career. You can control how high you climb up the corporate ladder. Even if you have to fight really hard, you can control it. You can control your level of fight. But when we get to the point in our lives where we no longer want to have to fight for everything, and we realize, it doesn't have to be this hard, that's when we begin to introspect and say, why has it been this hard? What is it in me? And I had to ask myself this question: what is it in me that likes to fight? And those are the pieces that sometimes we don't want to look at. But what you can face, you can overcome. You can never overcome the big scary monster if you never walk down that hallway. And what happens, my husband says this all the time. And it's literally one of the things that has helped me to face some of my greatest fears. When we are facing the big scary monster and we're afraid of it, you get to it and you realize it doesn't have any teeth every time. The monster never has teeth. And so the memory, the experience, the programming, whatever it is that we don't want to dig up and look at, and all of these things, because you think, oh, it's going to be this hard work and I don't have time for that, and all this unpacking and all of that. You realize when you get to the issue, when you get to the monster, it doesn't have teeth. It cannot hurt you. And the only pain that was associated with it was the pain of running away from it. Does that make sense? Is that helpful?
Yes, very much so. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, so Symphony says, okay, with the kiddos, okay, in the morning. All right, Symphony is in Trinidad right now, and so her time zone is way different. She'll catch it on the replay. Are there any other questions, ladies? Any other questions? Anything that stood out to you tonight?
Hi, yeah, it's Maria. I feel like I checked all the boxes, unfortunately. But the question that I had was, I just wonder, like working in a corporate, predominantly male industry and environment, I feel like, maybe I've taken on some of those characteristics as a result. And I was just wondering your thoughts on that. Can working in like a very masculine environment cause you to overly operate in a masculine versus the feminine? And how can I hone some of those skills? I mean, hone some of my feminine side in this environment.
Thank you for that. That is a great, and a lot of women probably experience that working in male dominated environments. If you are not aware of the power of femininity, then yes, working in a male dominated environment can cause you or be the catalyst of you stepping into and staying in your masculine, because you're around people who make it seem like being a woman is just a weakness or a problem or a difference that you should be ashamed of in some way, even if it's subtle. However, knowing the power of being a woman that's the first step, really, is understanding that you are no less powerful than a man. You are often more powerful than a man because he cannot explain your power. And that's a part of why non-masculine men, so there's toxic masculinity and there's healthy masculinity. There's toxic femininity, there's healthy femininity. Most men in today's society have been subtly influenced to be toxically masculine, and they don't even realize it. A lot of men are rising up and evolving past that because they're starting to see, hey, that I don't even like being that way. That's not cool. So a lot of men are starting to see that. When you realize that the power of influence that you have over men, the power of influence that you have over men supports you in staying in your feminine in these environments and understanding how to use that power, then it'll be much easier for you to not feel like I'm around men, so I have to be like a man. Because you actually get better results being around men and standing in your power. What I would like for you to do is give me an example of something that you are experiencing so that I can give you a feminine, I don't want to put on you like, here's what you need to do, because it may not have anything to do with the environment that you're in. So give me an example of something that you experience and we can talk out how to handle it in a feminine way.
Well, so I think the example that I would probably have would probably be in my personal life. And
Mhm.
I guess I'm wondering if the fact that, I've had to operate this way in my corporate environment is transferring over. So for the example I have, I've noticed myself being very like black and white when it comes to like operating with the other women in my family, like my mother and my sister in conversations. Um, or you mentioned like we say sometimes, okay, why can't you get that? Or, we're having the same conversations. It's got to be this way. And then oftentimes, I mean, it may be kind of a clear cut issue and that might be the right direction, but in my mind it's like I don't give a lot of room for gray. And so I feel like that is kind of moving more to like kind of my personal environment and those relationships with my mom and sister. And I guess I was wondering if they could be originating from kind of how I operate in a work environment.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
That could be it. However, often how we show up in different environments, it was a latent issue that was there before we got into the environment, and the environment simply aggravated it and brought it up even more. So I would begin with looking at how you treat yourself. Are you very black and white with yourself? Do you allow room for error or margin for error with yourself? And if not, that's where you have to begin. Because like I was telling Christy, when you begin to give yourself margin, when you begin to give yourself grace, then you can accommodate others. So good example, I hope. When we were raising our oldest and our two oldest boys, we were a lot more strict about our lifestyle then than we are now. So now, they can have like, what is something that they can have now that they didn't? Like chips. We wouldn't give them chips. We wouldn't give them sugar. We wouldn't give them any kind of dyed. We still don't give them any kind of dyed food. None of that. And to me, speaking about health is a clear-cut issue. It's either healthy or it's not. It's like, how are you arguing with me about wanting to keep my children healthy? That was my mindset. Okay. It was very black and white. As we've grown, when they go to their grandmother's house now, they have a snack cabinet that they can enjoy while they're there. Because what I have grown to understand is different people show their love in different ways. Now, this might not be the exact example, but this is an example of how to find gray area. Whenever I'm looking for gray area, when I'm feeling like it's got to be black or white, it's this or that, I ask myself, what is this person's positive intention? There's always a positive intention. Even if it seems like someone is trying to force their views on you or trying to force their ideas on you. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to absorb or accept their intention, but it is important to be aware of it so that you are not being so black or white, this or that, and closed off to what they're trying to share with you in that moment. So I asked myself, okay, what is it that they are really trying to do here? Because I know we both love these children. They love them, we love them. So they would never want to do something that is intentionally hurtful. What is it that they are trying to do? What is it that they are trying to share here? And that was how they were able to show love. When I thought back, my grandmother gave me all kinds of sweets and popsicles and candies and all the things, all the things. I could eat candy for breakfast at my grandmother's house. But saying yes was how she showed love, especially because she didn't have much money and wasn't well off and couldn't do all of the things that she wanted to do, maybe. That was how she gave love. And so understanding, okay, here's their gray area. This is how they are giving and receiving in this moment. I can choose what I will receive, but I cannot make them give in a different way. You can't force anybody to do that. You can't force anybody to see things the way that you see them. But what you can ask yourself, and this is where introspection comes in, this is where defaulting to thought comes in. Instead of defaulting to a goal, which in that moment, your goal may be to be right, to win the argument. Defaulting to that space of observation and saying, what is it that this person really wants in this moment? And this is how, even in male dominated environments, how you can get what you want all the time. Because if you are, instead of focusing on your goal, which may be to be right, to win, whatever it is, if you focus instead on what is motivating this person right now in that thoughtful space, what is their motivation? What is it that they want? If you can give them what they want, even a little bit, you will get what you want. And this is why certain women in work environments always seem to win. They always seem to get the men on their side. They always seem to say the right thing, do the right thing, because they're observing. They're paying attention, and that feminine communal mindset is so based on being able to see the people around you, being able to know them. What is it that moves them? What is it that makes them tick? If you can get a clear understanding on that, it doesn't mean that you have to know everything about everyone all the time, but it is important for you to be observing. What is it that they really want here? It's how I literally can get anybody to see things my way. I can get anybody. My husband says it all the time. He's like, I have seen men buckle in your presence. I've seen men who are strong just become putty in your hand, because I know how to pay attention to what's motivating them, not necessarily what's motivating me. So when you're dealing with your mother and your sister, listen. Listen to what they're saying, even if you know you're right. And what you'll notice is that if you can see where they're right, you can win the argument. You can win because you can make them right and still help them see the other side of things. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does. That's helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. How are things? I know that you mentioned that one of your family members was not well. How are things for you now?
Yeah. Well, yeah, my uncle passed away, and I think it's been challenging in this environment because I mean, it's like a loss, and you can't properly mourn. So I think that it's probably not going to really affect me until I have opportunity to go back home. I'm in Charlotte. They're in Dallas Fort Worth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think everybody's kind of handling the best they can. But thanks for asking.
You're welcome. Well, I have my condolences and my prayers for sure.
Thank
And
you.
I hope that you are absorbing the tools that you need to so that when you go home, it can be a positive experience for you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I think I will say that one thing that we talked about in the last Feminine Success call is helping me. And that's like you mentioned, just it was really important just to stop and ask yourself, what do you need in this moment?
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been finding myself doing that a lot and just allowing myself some grace, even if it is to step away from a project. Like ego, I tend to default into project work. So even if it means, okay, I'm not going to do something tonight, or I just need to sit down for, 5 or 10 minutes versus like, completing a task, it really can wait. I've been trying to practice allowing myself some grace in that manner. So thanks for mentioning that on the last call.
Are welcome. I'm very proud of you for stepping into that and allowing yourself to just, what you notice over time is that we have enough time to do everything that we want to do in this world. We have enough time. What we don't have enough time to do is stuff it all into a day or a week and say it needs to get done right now. And that's why I talk a lot about having clear priorities, really knowing what your priorities are so that you can focus on the things that are priority for you. So Brittany asks, further explain toxic masculinity. What does that look like? Oh, that is a whole other call. We could literally go into a whole call on toxic masculinity and toxic femininity. It could be two totally separate calls. So toxic masculinity, it begins with a man who is not aware of his identity. And because of that, because he is not clear and accepting of both his masculine and feminine side. So a healthy masculine man, like a healthy feminine woman, is balanced. There's harmony between their masculine side and their feminine side, and they're okay with that. A toxically masculine man will get his strength from oppressing and suppressing the people around him. He gets his strength. Often we see that the image of the toxic masculine man, he is yelling at others and screaming. He can't play well with other people. If his ideas aren't accepted, he's like huffing and puffing off in a corner or making life hard for the people around him. When you read, and even in the scripture, it describes men who are toxically masculine as brawlers and men who don't bring peace into their household, men who are loud and boisterous and prideful and make foolish decisions just because they are a man and they can do what they want. Often these are men who continue to do without thinking. So we've talked about before those two sides. The masculine flaw is to act without thinking. The feminine flaw is to think without acting. So we often plan ourselves to death. We are just over planning. We have to perfect it, the strategy, the things, all the things. A man on the other side will continue to just do things that are not aligned, things that make no sense when you put them together. He's just doing it and not thinking, how is this affecting the people around me? Because a healthy masculine man is highly responsible for the people around him. And so before he takes an action, he's thinking, how is this going to affect everyone in my world? A toxically masculine man is not considerate. He's very inconsiderate. He's thinking only of himself and only of his own pleasure, not his purpose. Does that help?
Yeah, because I just hear the term so much. I hear it and I hear it used. And of course, there's some using it loosely and then some. So I guess I've heard it so much, but just kind of want to understand, like, what can that look like in sense of actions and behaviors
Mm-hmm.
when you were talking about it. That did help kind of explain that. As far as on my end goes, though, I kind of agree with Marie. I think that was Marie, where she was talking about like her work environment, and do she think that can have her to pick up more masculine traits? Like, I know that that's something that I somewhat struggle with, is allowing my femininity to kind of shine through, and taking a back seat to some of, just finding that balance.
Mm-hmm.
I think that a big struggle with that comes from me having to wear both hats kind of a lot in my life, and always have had to wear both hats a lot, and then especially in business as well. So I mean, as far as like coexisting with my husband and being with my husband and not picking up too many of those masculine traits for myself, like the other day when you kind of was like, allow him to pick up the thing. It's like, I have it. I have that complex a little bit sometimes, like I have it. Not that I'm not intentional that I need help, but I already kind of have in me that I've been doing it this way, or I've been doing it myself for so long, so it sometimes kind of gets hard,
Mm-hmm.
So ask those requests, or make it known that, yeah, I can do it. However, it is more of a struggle for me to do it, or it's more exhausting for me to do it. So what are some tips and pointers that you have to kind of help me maintain that balance?
Yes, so you and Melissa are asking the same question right now, and I was thinking I'm going to answer this and I'm going to answer that at the same time.
Got it.
So, I love to give examples. One of the things that I struggled with in the beginning of my marriage was that I was always, I got it, I can do it, it's fine. He was working outside of the home at the time, and I had this complex around, if the man is at work all day, he shouldn't have to come home and do more work and all these other, this was crazy stuff that my father actually implanted in my mind. And so when first of all, my husband started to ask, like, why don't you ever ask me to do anything? Why don't you ask me to do stuff? He'd be standing in the kitchen and I'm like standing on the countertop trying to get a plate from the top of the cabinet. He's like, I'm tall though. Why, you have a tall person right here? So I started to notice. So that's the first thing, is you want to notice where you are seeing these things come up for yourself. So how do you make sure that you're balanced? That's what Melissa asked. Well, how do you make sure that you're in harmony? By paying attention to yourself. When you ask yourself, Maria just brought it up as something that I mention often in the program. When you ask yourself, what do I need now? What do I need right now? And making that a constant practice, you can also ask yourself, how does this feel for me? When you are doing the things that a man could be doing for you, or that just feel too heavy. Ask yourself, how does this feel for me? How does this feel for me? And this is how you know if you're paying attention to your body when you are in your masculine too much, or when you're in your feminine. You feel masculinity and femininity in different areas in your body. You feel masculinity often in your shoulders, in your back, in your hips, in your joints, not your womb, but your joints. You feel it in your bones, you feel it in your muscles. You also feel it when you are suppressing your voice. You feel it in your throat, because not communicating is a masculine trait. So you can feel that frog in your throat, is what a lot of people call it, when you're silencing yourself. You feel femininity in your heart. You feel it in your womb, in your gut, in that lower, if you're thinking about like the chakras and that alignment, you feel femininity in your heart space. You feel femininity in your womb space. You feel it also in your gut, that intuitive knowing, that feeling that you have. So if you're asking yourself moment to moment as situations come up, how does this feel for me? And what do I feel masculine is doing, feminine is feeling? What do I feel would be my next best move? So you not only discover your balance or discover if you are harmonized or not by paying attention to yourself, but you also maintain it by paying attention to yourself and taking action on what comes up for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely helped. It definitely, like, I register, okay, just stop what you're doing and kind of pay attention to yourself, and be able to process what I'm feeling, and then to be able to communicate what I'm feeling. So in an instance where you are basically identifying, okay, I'm being a little too bit masculine in this area, or I'm carrying too much masculinity, um, here in this moment, and then you do that communication, and then it's kind of like on the other end, like, well, what's wrong with that? You know, where do you go from there? When you are expressing that you may need to feel more feminine, but yet the environment does not foster you to be that way all the time.
Then you
Or
need to be specific. You need to be
okay.
specific, because if you don't, you're just getting to know what being more feminine means for you.
Mm-hmm.
If you're telling him, I need to feel more feminine, he's probably like, what is she talking about? What do you mean?
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
Mm-hmm.
First of all, because you've already created a culture. So you're having to go in and recreate the culture in your relationship right now, starting with your personal culture within yourself. Second, because he knows you as the person that you've been presenting yourself as all this time. And evolving can be scary. So you are going to have to specifically tell him, here is what I mean when I say I want to feel more feminine. Here is what that means to me. Here is how you can contribute to that. Now, when you tell him, here's how you can contribute, we always talk about ask questions, give options. Ask questions, give options. So maybe it is, what will make me feel more feminine is if I didn't ever have to take out the trash, and if I didn't ever have to put gas in the car, and if you handle the maintenance on all, but like what you probably have this list of things, or if you don't, you can create a list of things. Start by giving him options. So in the beginning, like I said, I never asked my husband for anything. And I was like, I shouldn't have to ask, and all these other things that we tell ourselves. What I did for myself was gave myself a quota day to day of requests that I would make of him. So I'd say, today I'm going to make 3 requests. Today I'm going to make 5 requests. Now I ask, if anybody is ever in my house, I'm like, hey, can you go make me a drink? Can you fix the table? Can you change the light bulb? It's a ton of requests. But I had to work my way up to that because I was so used to doing things myself all the time. I had to ask myself, is this what you really want? Does this feel good for you? Okay, it doesn't. Give yourself 3 requests to get yourself used to asking for things. And here's the thing, when that started for me, it wasn't just my husband. At the time he was working, he would be gone from like 4 in the morning till 7 or 8 in the evening. He was gone all the time. So it wasn't just my husband. It was men that I would see at the store, men that, his dad would come around. I would ask my father-in-law to do things, just any man. And that's why I say now, I can literally be in the grocery store and a random guy will see me picking something up and say, oh, I got that. Don't worry about that. I'll take care of that for you. Because I created this energy around myself of support me, help me. And we have been fed this idea that being that way is being a damsel in distress. And it's not. It's not that you cannot do it. But is that what you would rather be doing? Would you not rather be supported? And so start by asking yourself those kinds of clear questions. Would I rather be helped right now? And it may not start with your husband. It may start with your children. It may start with your friends. It may start with the stranger at the grocery store. Doing things like, I do this all the time. If I have a whole lot of groceries, I will ask the person at the register, hey, can you call someone up here to help me to my car with these groceries, please? Every single time it works. I've been in the parking lot at Costco and saw like this random child, he might have been 12 or 13, sitting on the cart thing, waiting for his mom to come out. And I was parked close to him. I said, hey, would you mind coming over here and helping me with my groceries, please? And he came and put my groceries in the car. I gave him $1 or $2, and that was that. And so you want to be honest with yourself about what you really want, what feels good for you. If doing it all does not feel good for you, don't do it all. Think about what you need done. So if my husband is like sitting on the couch or something and the dishes need to be done and the laundry needs to be done, I'll say, hey, there's several things around the house that I've wanted to get done all day, and I've been going and doing, I haven't been able to get to it. Here's what's left on my to-do list. I need to do a load of laundry and I need to do the dishes. Which one of those things can you help me with? And he'll pick one. You don't even give them the option to say no. No is not an option. It's which one of these things can you help me with? And they will tell you which one they can help you with. And so you set yourself up to get a yes. Brittany says, aha moment. I think my issue is really just asking my husband, not other people. Okay, so then you give him options. Which one of these things can you help me with? The same way, you just got him to build 2 garden beds for you. So I would absolutely stand in the fact that you are making progress right now, that he is making progress right now. You came home and he had built a garden bed without you having to stay on top of him about it. So what I would do right now is, but I had to get the wood. You know what? Did you ask him to go get the wood? What I would do right now is be lavishing appreciation on him. I would be letting him know this is men are like children in this way. What you appreciate them for, they continue to do more of. So the reward, I've taught this before. It's definitely in Flawless Femininity. Men play for points, and your appreciation is a point for him. A lot of times we think men just want one thing. No, they don't. Men want points. You smiling is a point for them. You appreciating him is a point for him. You cooking his favorite meal because he did something right is a point for him. Your husband was on his way to being a professional football player. He plays for points. That is his nature. And so look at, how can I give him points? Appreciation, letting him know, you know, I know I told you thank you for those garden beds, but I really appreciate when you do those kinds of things for me. It takes such a load off my shoulder when you provide that kind of support for me. The words provide and appreciate will trigger something in him that makes him want to do more of that, so that you can keep saying those kinds of things to him. Let's see. I see Melissa says, I love that. I love it. I'm so glad this is helpful. Makes sense. I definitely need to implement a quota. Yes, I gave myself at the time a quota, because it was hard for me to accept help from people. And I had to shift that. I had to change that. So that's how I changed it. And when they do what it is that you ask of them, make sure to say, I appreciate you. Let's see. I'm gonna practice that one starting tonight. I definitely have the I have to do it all mentality. Yes, for sure. Let's see. Melissa, I love that. Options. Okay. Should we accept gray areas if it causes doubt in my belief or understanding of the person or environment? Can you unmute yourself, Christy, and explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, I'll make it quick because it's getting late. Let's say if you have a family member, and I heard you tell the young lady that you've got to learn to listen, and see the gray area. But what if, I'm a person who overthinks things, and what if you saw a pattern with a person where they may say subtle things that could be, you might think they're toxic, but maybe they're not. They may say they're joking about something, but you're not sure. And that gray area, because I'm the type of person, I can be overly understanding. Like I can be too patient with people. And in that case, when it's family members or friends, do you still allow the room for the gray area? That's where I get confused.
So gray area here is not just laying down and taking whatever people do. That's not what I mean when I say gray area. Gray area is having an understanding of, okay, that's a weakness for them. That's something that they need to grow in or can grow in. Gray area is also understanding that sometimes they don't want to grow, that growth is scary for people, change is scary for people. However, the one of the most important things that you must do as a woman is decide what kind of behavior you will engage with. And so you can understand that a person has a weakness, and also say, if they are not willing to work on that, I am not willing to engage.
Okay, I told you. Okay, that helps me understand it much better. That's very clear.
Mhm. Boundaries. Boundaries are so important. There are, even with my mom knows there's certain things she cannot say around me. I will cut the conversation short. I will correct her if need be. Those who were at the Feminine Success Retreat, my mom was there, and my mom has a need for attention. And this is something that I'm not talking about her, we talk about all the time. She needs attention, big time. And if the attention is not on her, she will do things to bring the attention back to herself. So we were having a very intimate VIP coaching session late night, and there were questions being asked. People were crying. It was a lot. It was a lot. It was a beautiful moment. And my mom kept getting up and sitting down. She would get up, she would walk out of the room, sit down, get up, walk out, sit down. And I had to tell her, that is not going to be allowed. And if you do it again, you will have to leave. And that was the end of the story. it may have rubbed her the wrong way. It may have made her feel some kind of way, but that is not my responsibility. My responsibility is to protect the space around me. And if a person is not willing, especially an adult, is not willing to correct the things that are affecting me, at least make an attempt, then it's up to me to decide, am I going to continue to allow this at the cost of my own peace? For me to
Understood.
know. Okay.
I understand.
Okay. Are there any other questions tonight? Any other questions? So tonight's call was great. Thank you all for engaging, for asking your questions and being open. I truly appreciate it. I hope that this has been valuable for you and that you got things that have completely changed your perspective and allow you to show up in a more powerful way in your life. I'm excited to see what y'all create and the wins that y'all create this week from what you learned here. And we will meet again. What is it? Wednesday, next week, Wednesday. So with that, I'll say peace. Y'all have an amazing evening. Get you some good rest, and I'll talk to you soon.